There exists a chessboard you cannot see, yet you move across its squares every day. In the dim corridors of human interaction, something ancient stirs, a game older than memory, played in the space between words. You feel it in your gut before your mind can name it. The subtle twist of reality, the gentle displacement of truth. Like a dreamer who senses the dream is not their own, you walk through conversations that feel scripted by invisible hands. This is the realm of archetypal shadows, where your deepest vulnerabilities become weapons turned against the fortress of your soul. The question that haunts the unconscious: are you the player, or merely the piece being played? In today's video, we will explore this topic, diving deeper and deeper into its hidden depths. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Picture yourself descending a spiral staircase into the basement of the psyche. Each step takes you deeper into the territory Jung called the collective unconscious, that vast ocean where all human experience swirls in timeless patterns. Here, in these depths, live the archetypes, the hero, the mother, the wise old man. But also dwelling here, in chambers we dare not illuminate, is the shadow. The shadow is not merely darkness. It is the unacknowledged, the disowned, the parts of ourselves and others that have been cast into exile. And it is from this exile that manipulation draws its terrible power. For decades, Jung explored a disturbing truth. Certain individuals learn to weaponize the shadow. They discover how to slip past your conscious defenses and plant seeds of doubt in the fertile soil of your unconscious mind. They become, in essence, dark magicians of the psyche, practitioners of an ancient art that turns your own self-awareness into a mirror that reflects only their desired image. What makes this manipulation so insidious is its invisibility. You walk into the trap while believing you are walking toward truth. You surrender your sovereignty while thinking you are being reasonable. You betray yourself while convinced you are being loyal. Jung warned us. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But here is the terrible irony. Manipulators understand this principle better than their victims. They use your capacity for self-reflection as a doorway into your mind, twisting your noble desire for self-improvement into a weapon of self-destruction. In the mythology of consciousness, there are 5 questions, 5 psychological traps that have been laid since humans first learned to speak. These are not random tactics. They are archetypal patterns, recurring throughout history because they tap into universal vulnerabilities in the human psyche. To know these questions is to hold a map through the labyrinth. To understand them is to claim your birthright as a conscious being. This is what Jung called conscious realization, the moment when the veil lifts and you see the game for what it is. But be warned, once you develop this seeing, you cannot unsee. The matrix of manipulation will reveal itself in your friendships, your family, your workplace, even in strangers on the street. Some find this awakening disturbing. It is the burden of consciousness. Are you ready to open your eyes? Why are you being so sensitive? These 6 words carry the weight of a psychological guillotine. They fall upon you just as you have dared to name something wrong, something hidden, something true. And in their falling, they do not refute your claim. They refute your very right to perceive reality. Jung understood that sensitivity is not weakness. It is the soul's antenna, detecting incongruence in the field of human interaction. The sensitive person is like a finely tuned instrument, registering frequencies others cannot hear. They sense the lie beneath the smile, the aggression veiled as care, the exploitation disguised as opportunity. And this is precisely why they must be silenced. In the archetypal drama of manipulation, the perceptive one plays the role of the truth seer, the one who threatens to expose what must remain hidden. So the manipulator deploys what Jung termed shadow projection. They cast their own darkness onto you, making you believe that your light is the problem. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart, Jung wrote. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. But the manipulator fears your awakening. They need you dreaming, lost in the fog of self-doubt they manufacture around you. Consider the sacred pattern that repeats across human experience. The financial analyst who detects fraud is called paranoid. The wife who senses betrayal is dismissed as insecure. The employee who questions unethical practice is branded difficult. In each case, perception is reframed as pathology. This is the persecution of the perceptive, a tale as old as Cassandra, cursed to see truth that no one would believe. But Jung discovered something transformative. The moment you name the pattern, its power dissolves. When someone attacks your sensitivity, they reveal their fear of your perception. Your radar has detected something they desperately need to keep hidden. The antidote lies in what Jung called shadow integration, the conscious claiming of what has been denied. When accused of being too sensitive, the awakened response is simple and devastating. I am not being sensitive. I am being perceptive. Does that make you uncomfortable? Watch what unfolds in this moment of truth. The manipulator will either rage, revealing their true nature, deflect, confirming your suspicion, or suddenly turn sweet, a desperate attempt at damage control. Each response is a confession written in the language of the unconscious. You have turned on the light, and the shadow cannot survive illumination. You trust me, right? In the temple of human relationships, trust is the sacred altar. It is built slowly through countless small acts of integrity, word matching deed, promise kept, vulnerability honored. Trust emerges organically from the unconscious, a recognition that occurs below the threshold of language. But when someone demands trust, they reveal they have not earned it. Jung observed that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is a reaction, both are transformed. Genuine relationship is mutual transformation. But manipulation is not transformation, it is domination. The manipulator does not want to be changed by you. They want you changed by them. The phrase, "you trust me, right?" is what Jung would call a psychological ultimatum disguised as intimacy. It triggers what he termed the loyalty-conflict complex, a civil war within your psyche where the conscious mind desperately wants to be good, trusting, and open, while the unconscious screams warnings like a prophet in the wilderness. This internal division is precisely what the manipulator counts on. They know that good people will override their intuition to prove they are not cynical, not suspicious, not the kind of person who doubts others. They weaponize your nobility against you. Consider the archetypal scenarios. The business partner who will not show financial records but leans in with wounded eyes. You trust me, right? The romantic partner who hides their phone but demands. Don't you trust me? The friend who asks for money but provides no details. What happened to trust? In each case, trust is deployed as a weapon to bypass your analytical mind and activate your guilt complex. It is not about building bridges. It is about breaching walls. Jung taught that trustworthy individuals never need to ask for trust because they demonstrate what he called psychological congruence. Their words, actions, and energy all align. There is no gap between outer presentation and inner reality. This congruence speaks directly to your unconscious, creating safety without declaration. But manipulators have learned to counterfeit the language of trust. They use the vocabulary of intimacy to hack your security systems. The conscious response that exposes this charade is elegantly simple. Trust is earned through consistency, not through questions. Are you asking me to ignore my intuition? This statement does two things simultaneously. First, it places responsibility back where it belongs, on the person requesting trust to demonstrate trustworthiness. Second, it names the true request being made, the demand that you disconnect from your inner guidance system. A trustworthy person will respect this boundary and continue proving themselves through aligned action. A manipulator will react with defensiveness, deflection, or manufactured guilt. The shadow cannot bear the light of such clarity. Are you accusing me of something? In the mythology of consciousness, there is a moment when the hero begins to question the kingdom. Something is wrong in the realm. Resources disappearing, strange patterns emerging, a creeping sense that reality is not what it appears. So the hero asks a simple, honest question. And suddenly, the hero is on trial. This is the reversal technique, perhaps the most sophisticated weapon in the manipulator's arsenal. Jung called this projection, the unconscious mechanism by which we place our own denied qualities onto others and then relate to them, as if they possess what we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. But manipulators weaponize projection consciously. When you notice something suspicious and dare to inquire, they immediately project their guilt onto you and attack you for carrying it. Suddenly, you are not the observer asking a reasonable question. You are the aggressor making an accusation. You are not seeking clarity. You are creating conflict. This is psychological warfare disguised as self-defense. Jung wrote, "Projection is one of the commonest psychic phenomena. Everything that is unconscious in ourselves we discover in our neighbor, and we treat him accordingly." The manipulator understands this instinctively. They know that if they can make you feel like the problem, you will stop examining them and start examining yourself. Imagine the scene. You notice financial irregularities at work. You approach your superior with a straightforward question. Their immediate response: "Wait, are you accusing me of something?" The tone carries injury, shock, betrayal. The implication is clear. You have done something terrible by noticing. Now you are explaining yourself, apologizing for being observant, backpedaling from truth. This is what Jung termed the guilt transfer complex. The burden of wrongdoing is magically transferred from the perpetrator to the witness. The power of this manipulation lies not in the question itself, but in the expectation of your reaction. The manipulator expects immediate panic, rushed explanations, desperate apologies. They expect you to fill the uncomfortable silence with self-justification. They never expect composed confidence. The antidote is devastatingly simple and requires immense inner strength: the therapeutic pause. When someone snaps, "Are you accusing me of something?" you hold eye contact. You breathe. You wait 2 to 3 seconds, an eternity in conversation. Then you respond with 3 words. "Should I be?" These 3 words contain what Jung called conscious power, the authority that comes from remaining centered while others lose their center. Because innocent people do not fear questions. Only guilty people do. Your composed response forces them to confront their own shadow instead of hiding behind yours. The projection bounces back like light from a mirror. And in that reflection, the manipulator sees themselves. Would I ever lie to you? There is a particular species of deception that Jung found most fascinating: the lie that announces itself as truth, the performance that masquerades as authenticity. When someone asks, "Would I ever lie to you?" they are engaged in what he called persona manipulation, the creation of a false self so convincing that even questioning it feels like a moral transgression. But here is the profound insight: the question itself is the answer. Those who need to proclaim their honesty are often revealing their relationship with deception. Jung termed this unconscious confession through overcompensation. The manipulator, unable to fully repress their guilt, broadcasts it through the very intensity of their denial. The spouse who hides their phone but asks with tears in their eyes, "Would I ever lie to you?" The business partner who refuses transparency but seems wounded. "Come on, would I really deceive you?" This is the performance of innocence, and it is theatrical by design. Genuine honesty, Jung observed, does not perform. It simply exists. Truly trustworthy individuals create what he called unconscious trust. You feel safe with them without needing to analyze why. Their integrity is embedded in their being, not proclaimed through their words. But manipulators have learned to counterfeit this feeling. They use emotional theater to bypass your logical mind and activate your guilt complex. The tears, the wounded tone, the implied accusation that you are heartless for doubting them. All of it designed to make you stop thinking and start feeling sorry. This is the manipulation of empathy, the weaponization of your compassion. Jung understood that empathy is one of humanity's most beautiful capacities, but like all archetypal energies, it contains both light and shadow. The shadow side of empathy is the willingness to betray your own, knowing to soothe another's discomfort. The manipulator counts on this. They perform suffering so convincingly that you abandon truth to end their pain. Pain they are manufacturing specifically to control you. The technique that exposes this immediately requires you to refuse the emotional bait and return to conscious questioning. When someone asks, "Would I ever lie to you?" Pause. Then respond. That's not the right question. The question is, would I know if you did? This single response flips the entire psychological frame. It moves the conversation from emotion to awareness, from performance to reality. Liars thrive in emotional fog, but they wither under the spotlight of conscious awareness. Your response switches on what Jung called the light of consciousness, and suddenly the shadows have nowhere to hide. The performance collapses because you refuse to be its audience. Can't we just move on? In the deep structure of psychological healing, there is a truth Jung held sacred. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Real resolution requires facing uncomfortable truths, integrating difficult experiences, allowing the wound to be seen before it can be healed. But when a manipulator's tactics fail, when denial doesn't work, when distraction is ineffective, when guilt bounces back, they deploy what Jung would call the nuclear option, forced forgetting. The demand that you abandon truth for the illusion of peace. Can't we just move on? Sounds reasonable, even healthy. After all, dwelling on the past can be destructive. But Jung discovered something crucial. There is a profound difference between healthy resolution and psychological burial. Moving on without understanding is like placing a bandage over an infected wound. It looks better on the surface, but the poison continues to spread underneath, eventually erupting with greater violence than if it had been cleaned in the first place. Consider the pattern Jung identified. First, the manipulator denies there is a problem. When evidence becomes undeniable, they minimize it. It's not that bad. When minimization fails, they blame you. You're making too much of this. And finally, when all other tactics collapse, they exhaust you into abandoning the search for truth. Why do we keep talking about this? Let's just move forward. The company caught in scandal begs employees. Let's not dwell on the past. The unfaithful partner exposed pleads. We need to focus on our future. The abusive parent insists. Why bring up old history? These are not requests for healing. They are demands for amnesia. Jung called this psychological burial, the violent stuffing of unprocessed experience back into the unconscious, where it cannot threaten the manipulator's control, but will inevitably haunt the victim's psyche. True healing, Jung taught, happens when the unconscious becomes conscious. The wound must be brought into light, examined, understood, integrated. Only then can genuine transformation occur. Only then can you actually move forward rather than simply move away. The manipulator fears this process because consciousness threatens their narrative. They need you confused, not clear. They need you guilty, not empowered. They need you to abandon the quest for truth before you discover what they are hiding. The antidote lies in what Jung called conscious anchoring, the refusal to be rushed, pressured, or exhausted into abandoning your need for understanding. When someone asks, "Can't we just move on?" take a breath and respond. I will move on when I understand what happened, not before. This single sentence establishes your sovereignty. It announces that your peace is built on clarity, not confusion, that you cannot be manipulated through exhaustion or guilt into premature forgiveness. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The manipulator counts on you giving up, growing tired, letting unconscious patterns control your destiny. But you now hold the key to your own liberation. Now that the 5 shadows have been named and their power understood, Jung offers you the ultimate defense, a psychological posture that renders you essentially immune to manipulation. He called it conscious detachment. This is not coldness or disconnection. It is the ability to observe without being consumed, to participate without being controlled, to feel without being destabilized. It is the development of what Jung termed the witnessing consciousness, the part of you that can watch the drama unfold without being swept into the current. Jung discovered that manipulators have one fatal weakness. They need your emotional reaction to survive. Their power depends entirely on your destabilization. Take that away, and their entire system collapses like a house of cards in wind. Consider the master manipulator attempting to push your buttons. They deploy their tactics, the accusations, the guilt trips, the emotional theater. But you remain calm, clear, centered. You observe their performance with curiosity rather than anxiety. You see the game without playing it. This is psychological sovereignty, and it is the manipulator's greatest fear. Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." But manipulators want you to become what they need: confused, guilty, exhausted, compliant. They want to author your reality, to script your responses, to control your self-perception. Conscious detachment returns authorship of your life to you. Here is the practice Jung taught. Before responding to any manipulative question, ask yourself what he called the consciousness question. Is this reaction coming from my authentic self or from a complex they are trying to activate? This single inquiry creates space between stimulus and response, the space in which freedom lives. Because manipulators do not attack your true self. They cannot. Your authentic self is unreachable, sovereign, whole. Instead, they attack your complexes, the wounded parts, the insecure aspects, the places where you doubt yourself. They try to trigger your not good enough complex, your guilt complex, your need to be liked complex. These are the psychological backdoors through which they gain access to your mind. But when you operate from what Jung called the centered self, the integrated, conscious, individuated being, you become untouchable, not because you are defended, but because you are whole. Jung's ultimate technique for navigating manipulation is elegantly simple: the conscious pause. When faced with any of the 5 questions, you pause. You breathe. You feel your feet on the ground. You connect with your authentic self. Then you respond, not from your complex, but from your center. This is what Jung meant when he wrote, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." The manipulator wants to keep you dreaming, lost in the projected reality they create. But consciousness is the great awakener. And once you are awake, you can never be controlled again. The conscious pause accomplishes something profound. It breaks the spell of unconsciousness. Manipulation thrives in the realm of automatic reaction, where your complexes are triggered and respond before your conscious mind can intervene. But the pause interrupts this automaticity. It creates a sacred space where you can choose your response rather than being driven by unconscious compulsion. In this space, you are free. Here is where Jung's teaching takes a surprising turn. Every encounter with manipulation is actually a gift in disguise. He called this shadow work, the process of becoming stronger through understanding darkness. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Every manipulator who tries to control you is showing you where you need to build stronger psychological boundaries. Every lie they tell helps you develop better truth detection. Every game they play teaches you to recognize the next one faster. The people who attempt to manipulate you are unconsciously serving your growth. They force you to develop what Jung called conscious discrimination, the ability to instantly distinguish truth from deception, authentic connection from manipulation, genuine care from control. And once you develop this ability, you become dangerous to manipulators everywhere, not because you fight them, but because you see them. Jung discovered that being truly seen is the manipulator's greatest fear. They are shadow dwellers, operating in psychological darkness. When you shine the light of consciousness on their tactics, they lose all power. They are like vampires exposed to sunlight. They cannot survive in the presence of aware, centered, psychologically sovereign individuals. This is why Jung called conscious people the great threat to unconscious manipulation. Jung spent his entire career exploring one fundamental question: how do humans become psychologically free? His answer was profound. Freedom is not the absence of challenge. It is consciousness in the presence of challenge. You now possess what he called the seeing eyes. You can recognize the 5 archetypal questions. You understand the psychology behind each manipulation. But more importantly, you understand something deeper. These tactics only work on unconscious complexes. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But here is what is even more terrifying to a manipulator: encountering someone who has accepted themselves completely. Because when you are not at war with yourself, no one else can recruit you to fight against yourself. When you are not ashamed of your sensitivity, they cannot weaponize it. When you are not desperate for approval, they cannot withhold it for control. When you are not afraid of conflict, they cannot threaten you with abandonment. This is what Jung called individuation, becoming so psychologically integrated that external manipulation becomes impossible. You are no longer a collection of reactive complexes that others can push and pull. You are a conscious individual who responds from choice, not compulsion. And choice is the enemy of manipulation. Jung offers you an initiation into psychological freedom. For the next 7 days, every time someone tries to manipulate you with emotion, ask yourself this question: what complex in me is this person trying to activate? Then, instead of reacting from the complex, pause. Respond from your conscious center. Watch what happens. You will discover something beautiful. When you refuse to play manipulative games, you give everyone around you permission to be authentic too. Your consciousness does not just free you. It creates a field of authenticity that elevates everyone in your presence. This is the ultimate victory over manipulation, not just protecting yourself, but creating space for genuine connection with others. Manipulative people, Jung observed, will do one of two things in your presence. They will either change their behavior and become more authentic, or they will simply disappear from your life. Both outcomes serve your freedom, because manipulation requires your participation. Without your unconscious compliance, the game cannot be played. You are no longer anyone's psychological victim. You are awake. You are conscious. You are free. In a world full of shadows, the awakened are the light bringers. Jung's final gift is this reminder: your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. The manipulators have been building barriers between you and authentic connection, walls of doubt, confusion, guilt, and fear. But now you can see the barriers. You can remove them stone by stone, and you can step into the genuine relationships that were always waiting on the other side. This is the journey of individuation, from unconscious to conscious, from reactive to responsive, from manipulated to sovereign. Choose consciousness. Choose clarity. Choose psychological freedom. Walk as Jung intended, awake, aware, and unshakably yourself. The shadow's greatest fear is your light. Turn it on. Keep it on. Never let anyone convince you to dim it. For when you shine, you illuminate not only your own path, but the path for all who have lost their way in darkness. You become what Jung called the individuated soul, a beacon in the collective unconscious, reminding humanity of what is possible when consciousness awakens. This is your birthright. This is your power. This is your freedom. The game is over. You have seen through the illusion. Welcome home to yourself. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe.